All right, we want to create new functions by composing two existing functions. And the key here is we're creating a new function. These are not solving problems. We're not solving anything. We're creating new functions. So before we start, we always want to identify the domain of the original function. So f of x equals 2 minus x. That's a linear function. The domain is all real numbers. And g of x, 1 over x squared, the domain of that, well, x can't equal 0 because we can't have 0 in the denominator. All right, so let's start on our first one here. We want to find f composed with g. So this means f of g of x. So g of x goes inside of f of x, and this is what it looks like. So we start by writing f of x, 2 minus, and then when we get to the x we stop because that's where we're going to put g of x. So here's my g of x going in to f of x, right there. There's my g of x. Okay, so that's what this one would look like. So if we wanted to finish this up, we could say f composed with g at x equals 2 minus 1 over x squared. Now let's evaluate the domain of this new function. Okay, so the new function, look, it has a rational piece right here, and we know that we can't have 0 in the denominator, so x can't be 0 right there. Let's do another example. Let's take g composed with f. So that would look like g of f of x. So we start by writing g of x. Let's start with g of x. So we have 1 over, and then when we get to the x we stop. And that's where we're going to put f of x. f of x is going to go inside of g of x. So that's going to go inside, and then that looks like 2 minus x, but then don't forget the original g of x has a squared. Okay, and right now I'm going to caution you, don't multiply it out. Because it's much easier to see the domain when you don't multiply that out. All right, so let's figure out what the domain is. And I'll just change to a different color. Domain. Okay, so we know we can't have 0 in the denominator. So that means that 2 minus x squared can't equal 0, but we let it equal 0 to figure out what it can't be. So square root both sides, and then you get 2 minus x equals 0. And if we add x to both sides, we end up with x equals 2. So that means in my new domain here, let's change to a different color, the domain of this new composite function, x can't equal 2. All right, and let's do one more example here. Let's compose f with itself. Okay, so this means f of x is going to go inside of itself, and this is what it looks like. Start with writing f of x, 2 minus, oh, but now when I get to the x I stop and I put in, oops, let's change to a different color, and I put in all of f of x. Well, f of x is 2 minus x. Notice the whole thing is in parentheses. So this one we can just simplify a little bit because we're not affecting the domain of this one. So let's distribute that negative. So we have 2 minus 2 plus x, and then simplify a little bit more. We just get x. And let's go ahead and calculate the domain of this one. So the domain of x, that's just a linear line, and that's going to be all real numbers. So that's the end of this example. I'll do another example on a separate video.